In the late 1970s, the wind howled through our small village in rural China, rattling the thin walls of our mud brick home. Dust swirled outside, coating the fields where Quinn, had toiled for years to keep our family afloat. My husband, Ethan Miller, had just returned from his military post, his uniform crisp, his face alight with pride. He'd been promoted, a rare honor for a man from our impoverished corner of the world. With the promotion came a coveted opportunity permission to relocate his family to the military base, a chance to escape the grinding poverty of the countryside. I dreamed of a new life, one where my back wouldn't ache from fieldwork, where I could stand beside Ethan as his wife, respected and secure. Ethan sat at our wobbly wooden table, his broad shoulders filling the room with an authority I'd once admired. He clutched 3 train tickets, his fingers tracing the edges as if they were gold. Quinn said, his voice steady but distant. "I've got tickets for me, my cousin Rachel Lane, and her son. We'll go first. Mother's leg is still healing from her fall, so you must stay and look after her. Once she's better, I'll come back for you." His eyes avoided mine, fixed on the flickering oil lamp. The words landed like stones in my chest, heavy and cold. Rachel Lane, his cousin, and her young son were his priority, not me, his wife of 6 years. I stood frozen, the coarse fabric of my patched dress brushing against my calloused hands. The room felt smaller, the air thick with unspoken truths. Ethan's promise echoed in my mind, not because it was new, but because I had heard it before in another life. I was reborn, given a second chance after a past life of betrayal and ruin. Ethan had spoken those exact words in that life, leaving me behind to care for his mother Gloria while he built a secret family with Rachel. I had been naive, trusting his vows only to be crushed by his deceit. This time, my heart didn't race with hope. It burned with clarity. Ethan's departure marked the beginning of my unraveling in my previous life. I slaved for Gloria, a sharp-tongued woman who treated me like a servant while Ethan sent his wages to Rachel. When Gloria's leg healed, she led villagers to frame me in a scandal, accusing me of an affair with old Sam, the village bachelor. They nailed me to a pillar of disgrace where I was spat on and cursed. Desperate, I sought Ethan, only to find him escorting a pregnant Rachel to a prenatal checkup. He had married her in secret, erasing me from his life. Broken and penniless, I wandered until a car struck me and everything darkened. Death was my release, but fate brought me back. Standing before Ethan, I saw the same man who had abandoned me, his face unchanged, his lies familiar. The village was the same, 2 narrow dirt paths, gossiping neighbors, and the weight of tradition that bound women like me to sacrifice. But I was different. Rebirth had sharpened my senses, stripped away my innocence. I saw the flicker of guilt in Ethan's eyes, the way his fingers tightened around the tickets. Rachel, with her soft smiles and feigned fragility, wasn't just a cousin. She was his choice, his future, and I was the obstacle he planned to leave behind. I forced a smile, my voice calm despite the fire in my veins. "Don't worry, Ethan. I'll take good care of your mother." He nodded, relieved, unaware that my words were a vow not to serve, but to survive. I had been a fool in my past life, pouring my youth into a family that despised me. I worked the fields, mended their clothes, and cooked their meals, all while Ethan and Rachel lived comfortably on his wages. This time, I would not be their martyr. The train tickets in Ethan's hand symbolized his betrayal, but were also my signal to act. I would dismantle their plans piece by piece and reclaim the life they stole. As Ethan packed his bags, I watched him, my mind racing. The village steeped in the rigid customs of the time expected wives to obey and sacrifice. But I was no longer bound by those chains. Rebirth had given me knowledge not just of Ethan's deceit, but of the opportunities waiting beyond this village. China was stirring its economy, poised to open, and I would seize that future. For now, I played the dutiful wife, my eyes tracing the cracks in our home's walls, each one a reminder of the life I'd endured. Ethan thought he could leave me behind again. He was wrong. This time, my fate was mine to shape. The memory of my past life clung to me like the damp chill of our village's winter mornings, sharp and unrelenting. In that life, Quinn was the dutiful wife bound by love and duty to a man who saw me as little more than a servant. Ethan Miller, my husband, had joined the military, leaving me in our rural Chinese village to care for his mother, Gloria, and our crumbling home. His promotion, a beacon of hope, came with a promise he would take me to the military base once Gloria's leg, injured in a fall, had healed. I believed him, pouring my heart into that promise, unaware it was a lie that would unravel my life. Our village, nestled in the late 1970s, was where tradition weighed heavily on women. Wives were expected to toil without complaint, their worth measured by their sacrifices. I worked the fields from dawn to dusk, my hands blistered from wielding a hoe earning work points to feed Ethan's family. Gloria, a wiry woman with a tongue like a whip, demanded constant care. Her leg injury, I later learned, was a convenient excuse, not a crippling ailment. Ethan sent no money home, claiming his wages were meager. Yet whispers reached me that Rachel Lane, his cousin, wore new clothes and ate well funded by the money I never saw. Rachel arrived with her young son Josh a year into Ethan's absence. Ethan had introduced her as a widowed relative, alone and destitute. I pitied her, welcoming her into our home. I cooked for her, shared our scarce resources, and ignored the villagers' sidelong glances. But Rachel's soft smiles and lingering touches on Ethan's arm when he visited sowed seeds of doubt. I pushed them aside, clinging to my role as the virtuous wife. In the village, a woman's honor was her currency, and I couldn't afford to lose it. Yet the truth festered: Ethan's kindness to Rachel was more than charity. When Ethan returned with news of his promotion, he repeated his promise to take me later, insisting Rachel and Josh needed the relocation more. I protested, my voice trembling with rare defiance. "I'm your wife, Ethan." "Why them and not me?" he snapped. "I'm helping someone in need. Shouldn't you support that?" His words stung, but I stayed tending to Gloria with unwavering devotion. I cooked her nourishing meals, caught fish from the river, and cleaned her bedpans, terrified she'd develop bed sores. I treated her better than my mother, hoping my sacrifices would earn Ethan's loyalty. Months passed, and Gloria's leg showed no improvement. Her complaints grew sharper, and her demands became more cruel. One night, exhausted from fieldwork, I collapsed into bed only to be woken by shouts. Gloria, miraculously mobile, led a mob of villagers into our home. They dragged me from my bed, accusing me of bedding old Sam, the village bachelor, a man 30 years my senior, wrinkled and reeking. I was framed the scene staged with Sam under my covers, a setup orchestrated by Gloria. The villagers nailed me to a pillar of disgrace in the town square, spitting and cursing me as a harlot. My reputation shattered, I clung to one hope: Ethan would believe me. I scraped together coins for a bus to the military base, my heart pounding with desperation. Surely Ethan, who knew my loyalty, would defend me. But when I arrived, I saw him with Rachel, her belly swollen with pregnancy, at a prenatal checkup. My world tilted. He pulled out a marriage certificate, his and Rachel's, revealing they'd wed secretly. I had slaved for 6 years, pouring my youth into his family, only to be told I was nothing to him. The betrayal cut deeper than the villagers' scorn. Penniless and broken, I wandered the city streets until a car struck me and darkness swallowed me whole. That life taught me the cost of trust. Gloria's scheme, Rachel's deceit, and Ethan's abandonment were not accidents but choices. In my past life, I was a pawn in their game, my sacrifices fueling their comfort. Reborn. I carried those scars, each memory a spark igniting my resolve. Ethan's promise to return for me was a lie I'd heard before, and this time I wouldn't wait for him to break it. The village, with its gossip and rigid customs, could no longer cage me. I would rewrite my story not as a victim, but as a woman who forged her path. The morning sun filtered through the cracked window of our mud brick home, casting jagged shadows across the dirt floor. It was the late 1970s, and our rural Chinese village buzzed with the monotony of daily life: chickens, clucking neighbors, gossiping, the distant hum of a tractor. Quinn stood in the yard, my patched dress hanging loosely on my frame, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy coursing through me. Reborn after a past life of betrayal, I was no longer the naive wife who trusted unquestioningly. Ethan's promise to return for me after taking Rachel Lane and her son to the military base echoed in my ears, but this time it sparked not hope, but resolve. I pushed open the gate, the rusty hinges squealing, and froze at the sight before me. Ethan, my husband of 6 years, knelt in the dust, tossing Rachel's young son Josh into the air. The boy's laughter rang out high and gleeful as he called Daddy again. Ethan's strong arms caught him, his face alight with a warmth I'd never seen directed at me. Rachel stood nearby, her delicate features framed by a new scarf, a luxury in our impoverished village. She stepped closer, her handkerchief dabbing sweat from Ethan's brow with an intimacy that twisted my stomach. Their eyes met hers. Soft as tender, a private world I was excluded from. In my past life, I had dismissed such moments, believing Ethan's excuse that Josh called him daddy because he lacked a father. I had been blind, swallowing my pride to maintain the facade of a dutiful wife. But Rebirth had lifted the veil. I saw the truth in their lingering glances, the ease of their touches. Rachel wasn't just a cousin. She was Ethan's secret choice. The village, bound by tradition, expected me to endure in silence to sacrifice for my husband's family. But I was done playing that role. Mrs. Green, our neighbor, shuffled over, her face creased with concern. "Quinn, you're finally getting out of here," she gripped my hand. "Ethan's promotion means you'll join the army life. Your tough days are over." Her words, meant to comfort, were a revelation. She had said the same in my past life, exposing Ethan's plan to take Rachel instead of me. He had hidden the relocation order, intending to leave me behind again. This time I didn't confront him immediately. I let the knowledge simmer, fueling my determination. I turned back to Ethan and Rachel, their laughter mocking my past devotion. I said, "Don't worry, Ethan," my voice steady, betraying none of the fire within. "I'll take good care of your mother." He nodded, his relief palpable, unaware that my words were a calculated mask. In my previous life, I had begged to join him, only to be dismissed with lies about Rachel's neediness. I had slaved for his mother Gloria while he sent wages to Rachel, leaving me to scrape by. This time I would not plead or wait, I would act. The village around me felt smaller, its narrow paths and judgmental whispers no longer a cage. I had withered under its expectations in my past life, my honor tied to Ethan's name. Now I saw an opportunity beyond its borders. China was on the cusp of change, its economy stirring with reforms that promised a new era. I would seize that future, but first I needed to unravel Ethan's deceit. His promotion was my chance not to follow him, but to break free. I stepped back into the house, my mind racing. Ethan's bags were packed, and the 3 train tickets tucked inside symbolized his betrayal. I had been too trusting and eager to please in my past life. I had worked the fields, mended his clothes, and cared for Gloria, while he built a life with Rachel. Now I saw every glance, every lie with piercing clarity. Rachel's son calling him daddy wasn't innocent. It was a truth I had ignored. As Ethan laughed with Josh, oblivious to my gaze, I vowed to turn their game against them. This time I would write my ending. The dust of our rural Chinese village swirled under a gray sky, mirroring the storm brewing in my heart. It was the late 1970s, when loyalty was expected of wives and betrayal was buried under whispers. 3 days after Ethan left with Rachel Lane and her son Josh for the military base, I stood in our cramped yard, my patched dress stained with the weight of my labor. Reborn with the memories of my past life's ruin, I was no longer the naive Quinn who trusted Ethan's promises. His words, "I'll come back for you," were a lie I'd heard before, and this time I would turn his deceit against him. I acted swiftly, my resolve as sharp as the sickle I once wielded in the fields. At dawn, I slipped into the village's telegraph office, the air thick with the scent of ink and old wood. I sent a telegram to Ethan's mother, critically ill, return urgently. The words were simple, but their impact would be profound. In my past life, I had cared for his mother Gloria with devotion, only to be framed and humiliated. This time I ensured her condition matched my message. Gloria's leg, supposedly injured, had been neglected, her bandages unchanged, her complaints ignored. I knew the infection would worsen, and it did. Her limbs grew feverish, the skin darkening with necrosis. Ethan arrived 2 days later, his uniform rumpled, his face etched with exhaustion and panic. He burst into the house where Gloria lay moaning in her bed, the stench of decay heavy in the air. "Quinn, what happened?" he demanded, his voice cracking. I wrung my hands, playing the part of a frantic wife. I tried Ethan. Her leg got worse so fast, I didn't know what to do. My eyes brimmed with false tears, but I felt a cold satisfaction inside. The doctor summoned from the town clinic shook his head grimly. "Necrosis," he said. "Both legs must be amputated to save her life." Ethan staggered, his world tilting, while I hid my triumph. The next day, the village buzzed with gossip. Gloria's younger son, Jack, a loutish man who leered at me when Ethan was away, tried to rally sympathy for his mother. But the villagers, quick to judge, surrounded their house, jeering at the family's misfortune. "Serves them right," one muttered, "always lording over us." I seized the moment, ensuring the spectacle grew. I spread whispers that Gloria's condition was a curse for her cruelty, a rumor that took root in our superstitious village. Jack's protests only fueled their scorn, his shouts drowned by mocking laughter. As Gloria was prepared for transport to the hospital, I volunteered to push her cart, a rickety wooden contraption used for market runs. The path to town was uneven, winding past fields and a steep gully. I moved slowly, letting neighbors see my effort to care for her. At a deserted stretch near a ditch overgrown with weeds, I gave the cart a deliberate shove. It lurched forward, tumbling into the gully with a sickening crunch. Gloria's unconscious form jolted her already weakened legs, smashing against jagged rocks. I scrambled down, feigning panic, my screams echoing, "Help! She's hurt!" Blood seeped from her shattered limbs, sealing her fate. Villagers rushed to the scene, their faces pale with horror. "What happened?" they gasped. I sobbed, my voice trembling. The cart slipped. I couldn't hold it. No one questioned me. My tattered appearance and tear-streaked face sold the lie. At the hospital, doctors amputated both of Gloria's legs, her screams fading into drugged silence. Ethan, summoned again by my urgent message, arrived to find his mother legless, her survival a burden he hadn't anticipated. He stared at me, his eyes searching for answers I wouldn't give. "Quinn," he whispered, "how did this happen?" I shook my head, my expression one of feigned grief. "It was an accident, Ethan. I tried to save her. I had been a pawn in my past life caring for Gloria, while Ethan built a life with Rachel. Her injury had been a ruse to keep me trapped, a prelude to her framing me with old Sam. I turned her lie into truth this time, ensuring she'd never walk again. With its rigid customs and quick judgments, the village became my unwitting ally, amplifying Gloria's downfall. Ethan's promotion, meant to elevate him, was now a chain tying him to his mother's care. As I stood by the hospital bed, watching him grapple with guilt, I felt the first thrill of control. This was my first strike, and it landed perfectly. The hospital in our rural Chinese village was a squat gray building, its walls stained by years of neglect. Inside, the air was heavy with the tang of antiseptic and despair. It was the late 1970s when women like me, Quinn, were expected to bow under the weight of duty to sacrifice without question for family. But I was reborn, my past life's betrayals etched into my soul. Ethan Miller. My husband stood before me, his face haggard from the sight of his mother Gloria, now legless after the cart accident I had orchestrated. His eyes, once cold with indifference, now pleaded for my compliance. "Quinn," he said, his voice low, almost breaking, "Mom's condition is worse than I feared. The doctor says she'll need constant care. Could you stay in the countryside just for now to look after her? I'll sort things out at the base and come back for you." His words were a familiar trap, the same ones he used in my past life to abandon me for Rachel Lane and her son. Then I had begged to join him, my heart torn by his lies about Rachel's neediness. I had stayed slaving for Gloria while he built a secret family. I saw through the deceit this time, and I would not bend. I turned to the corner of the hospital room where my worn cloth bag lay packed with the few possessions I owned, 3 patched dresses, a pair of frayed shoes, and a resolve harder than steel. "She's your mother, Ethan," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the hum of the hospital. "Not my burden. I'm no maid." His jaw tightened, shock flickering in his eyes. My refusal was a rebellion in our village where tradition demanded a wife's obedience. Women were expected to serve to carry the weight of family honor, but I was done with their rules. Ethan stepped closer, his hands outstretched as if to coax me back to the role I'd played for 6 years. "Quinn, please. I can't do this alone. The army needs me at the base, and Mom," I cut him off, my gaze cold. "You've managed just fine without me before. You took Rachel and Josh, didn't you? Let them help." My words struck like a slap, naming the betrayal he thought I'd ignored. In my past life, I had learned of his relocation plans too late through Mrs. Green, our neighbor, who revealed he'd hidden the transfer order to prioritize Rachel. Now I wielded that knowledge like a weapon. Mrs. Green's voice echoed in my memory, her words from days ago ringing with truth. "Quinn, you're finally getting out of here. Your tough days are over." She had assumed Ethan would take me unaware of his plan to leave me behind again. In my past life, I confronted him, and my anger met with excuses about Rachel's struggles. I had believed his lies, staying to care for Gloria while he sent wages to Rachel, leaving me to starve in patched clothes. This time, I refused to repeat that mistake. My defiance was not just for Ethan, but for the village that expected me to crumble. I hoisted my bag over my shoulder, the weight light compared to the years I'd carried his family's burdens. Ethan's face darkened, his voice rising. "Quinn, you're my wife. You can't just walk away." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that silenced him. "Watch me," I said, stepping past him toward the door. The hospital's fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows on his stunned expression. In my past life, I had withered under his neglect, my youth spent on a family that despised me. Gloria had framed me with old Sam, the village bachelor, to ruin my name. Ethan had abandoned me for Rachel, his secret wife. Now I was rewriting the story. Outside the village sprawled before me, its dirt paths and gossiping neighbors a reminder of the cage I was escaping. The late 1970s were a turning point for China, with whispers of economic reforms promising opportunities beyond these fields. I had no plan yet, only the money I'd taken from Ethan's bag and a burning need to break free. Ethan's promotion meant to secure his future with Rachel was unraveling because of me. Gloria's amputation, orchestrated by my hand, had tied him to a burden he couldn't escape. As I walked away from the hospital, my steps firm, I felt the first spark of power. I was no longer the sacrificial wife. I was Quinn, and I would forge my path. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across our rural Chinese village, its dirt paths bustling with the chatter of neighbors in the late 1970s. Inside our mud brick home, the air was thick with tension, the scent of stale rice lingering from a meal I no longer bothered to cook. Quinn stood in the dim light, my reborn eyes sharp with the knowledge of Ethan's betrayal. I had been a fool in my past life, believing his lies about Rachel Lane, his cousin, while I slaved for his family. Now reborn, I saw every glance an excuse for what it was, a web of deceit spun to keep me trapped. Mrs. Green's words from days earlier echoed in my mind. Quinn, you're finally getting out of here. Her assumption that Ethan's promotion meant a new life for me had exposed his secret. He had hidden the relocation order, planning to take Rachel and her son Josh to the military base while leaving me behind to care for his mother, Gloria. In my past life, I confronted him, my heart breaking as he justified prioritizing Rachel's struggles. I held my anger close this time, letting it fuel my resolve. I would not beg or plead. I would act. Ethan sat at our rickety table, his military cap beside him, oblivious to the storm brewing in me. Quinn, he said, his voice strained after seeing Gloria's legless state in the hospital. I'm sorry about Mom. I didn't expect this. His apology was hollow, a performance for a wife he thought he could still control. I leaned against the wall, my patched dress a stark contrast to the new scarf Rachel wore, bought with money I never saw. Why didn't you tell me about the relocation order? I asked, my tone calm but piercing. His eyes widened, caught off guard. Mrs. Green mentioned it. Were you planning to leave me here forever? He stammered. It's not like that, Quinn. Rachel and Josh are struggling. I needed to help them first. You're strong, you can handle things here. His words mirrored those from my past life when I believed his excuse about Rachel being a widowed cousin. Now, village gossip confirmed the truth. Ethan sent his wages to her, funding her new clothes and comfortable life, while I wore rags, my hands calloused from fieldwork. Strong, I said, a bitter laugh escaping. I've been strong for 6 years, Ethan, keeping your family fed while you supported her. His silence was an admission, his face paling under my gaze. I stepped toward his luggage, left open on the floor. Inside, I found a stack of bills, his military pay, more than I'd seen in years. In my past life, I never touched his money, thinking it was his burden to bear. I was a fool then, starving while Rachel thrived. Now I scooped up every bill, stuffing them into my pocket. Quinn, what are you doing? Ethan demanded, rising. This is for debts, I said coolly. Your mother's care, Rachel's fancy meals, Josh's snacks. It all adds up. I've been borrowing to keep this house running. He had no reply, his lies exposed by the reality of my tattered sleeves. I turned to the corner where a pair of shoes lay, ones I'd stitched for Ethan by lamplight, my fingers pricked raw. In my past life, they were a gift of love unworn as he left with Rachel. Now they were a symbol of my wasted devotion. I grabbed them and walked out, ignoring Ethan's protests. At Mrs. Green's house next door, I handed her the shoes. For you and Mr. Green, I said. Her eyes widened. These are for Ethan, aren't they? I shook my head. He's been with Rachel behind my back. He doesn't deserve them. She sighed, her voice soft. The whole village knows, Quinn. I thought you did too. It's good you're waking up. Her words confirmed what I'd suspected. Ethan's affair was no secret, only I had been blind. In my past life, I endured the gossip, hoping my sacrifices would win his loyalty. I saw the village's whispers as a tool, not a shackle. The late 1970s stirred with change, China's reforms promising a world beyond these fields. I would use Ethan's money to escape, but first I would unravel his plans. Gloria's amputation, my first strike, had bound him to a burden. Taking his money and rejecting his gifts was my second. As I left Mrs. Green's, my steps were light, my heart fierce. Ethan thought he could keep me in the dark. He was wrong. The moon hung low over our rural Chinese village, its pale light seeping through the cracked walls of our mud brick home. It was the late 1970s when whispers carried more weight than truth, and women like me, Quinn, were expected to bow to family demands. Reborn with the scars of my past life's betrayal, I moved through the house with silent purpose, my heart a furnace of resolve. Ethan Miller, my husband, thought he could keep me tethered to his mother Gloria while he built a life with Rachel Lane. But I was no longer the naive wife who trusted his lies. As the village slept that night, I crept toward Gloria's room, drawn by the low murmur of voices. Ethan's military leave was nearing its end, and I knew he was plotting. In my past life, Gloria had faked a leg injury to keep me in the village, framing me in a scandal with old Sam, the village bachelor, to ruin my name. Now reborn, I anticipated their deceit. I caught their whispered conspiracy by pressing my ear to the thin wooden door. "She's not herself lately," Ethan said, his voice tense. I had to tell Quinn I'd take her to the base to keep her quiet. "But Rachel's pregnant with my child. She's the one I'm bringing." Gloria's voice was sharp, dripping with malice. "You're not seriously taking that barren hen, are you, Rachel? And the baby need you. Leave Quinn to me. I'll fake a leg injury tomorrow, say I tripped. I know someone at the clinic who'll back me up. Quinn will believe I'm hurt and stay without a fuss." She chuckled, a cold, calculating sound. "After Rachel gives birth, we'll deal with Quinn. I've got a plan to finish her for good." My blood ran cold as she described a sedative hidden under her pillow, potent enough to knock out a tiger. "Just a pinch," she said, "and she'll be out cold. Like last time with old Sam." I clenched my fists, remembering my past life's humiliation surging. Gloria had drugged me, then staging the scandal that led to my public shaming. The villagers had nailed me to a pillar of disgrace, their spit and curses stripping my dignity. Ethan had abandoned me, revealing his secret marriage to Rachel. Now they planned to repeat the trap, using a fake injury to chain me to Gloria's care while Ethan and Rachel escaped to the military base. But this time I was ready. Their web of lies would become their undoing. I slipped back to my room, my mind racing. The village, steeped in tradition, expected me to obey and sacrifice for Ethan's family. But I saw through their game. Gloria's sedative was my opportunity, a weapon I could turn against her. I began packing my few belongings, 3 patched dresses, a comb, the money I'd taken from Ethan's bag, pretending to prepare for the relocation Ethan had falsely promised. Each item I folded was a step toward freedom, a rejection of my role in my past life. I moved noisily, letting Ethan and Gloria hear my bustling, lulling them into believing I was oblivious. The next morning, I played my part flawlessly. I cooked rice porridge, my hands steady as I served Gloria, her smug smile betraying her confidence in the plan. "Quinn, you're so good to me," she said, her voice dripping with false gratitude. I nodded my face, a mask of compliance. "Anything for family," I replied, the words bitter on my tongue. Ethan watched, his eyes flickering with unease, but he said nothing. He thought I was the same dutiful wife who had slaved for 6 years supporting his household while he sent wages to Rachel. He was wrong. Outside, the village stirred its dirt paths alive with the chatter of neighbors. In the late 1970s, gossip was currency, and I knew how to wield it. I let slip to Mrs. Green that Gloria was unwell again, planting seeds of doubt about her character. The village's superstitious nature would amplify any misfortune, and I intended to use that to my advantage. Gloria's plan relied on my compliance, but I was no longer her pawn. The sedative under her pillow was a ticking bomb, and I would light the fuse. As I bustled about pretending to pack for a journey I knew Ethan would never allow, I felt a surge of power. Their lies had trapped me once. This time I would spin the web. The dawn broke over our rural Chinese village, painting the mud brick houses in hues of gold and gray. It was the late 1970s when tradition-bound women like me, Quinn, were bound to silence and sacrifice. But I was reborn, my past life's betrayals fueling a fire within me. Ethan Miller. My husband and his mother, Gloria, thought they could trap me with a staged injury, keeping me in the village while Ethan took Rachel Lane to the military base. I had overheard their plan. Gloria would fake a fall using a sedative to ensure my compliance. This time I would turn their weapon against them. In the dim kitchen, I stirred a pot of noodles, the steam rising like my resolve. Gloria's sedative, hidden under her pillow, was my key to unraveling their scheme. In my past life, she had drugged me, framing me with old Sam, the village bachelor, to destroy my reputation. Now I would ensure her injury was no act. I slipped the sedative, a fine, odorless powder, into her bowl, mixing it with 2 fried eggs to mask any taste. "Breakfast, Mom," I called, carrying the tray to her room. Propped up in bed, Gloria smirked with the confidence of a woman who thought she'd won. "You're too good to me, Quinn," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. I watched as she ate her spoon, scraping the bowl with relish. Within minutes, her eyelids drooped, her body slumping against the pillows. The sedative worked faster than I'd expected. I burst out the door, my voice piercing the morning calm. "Help, someone help." My mother-in-law fainted. Neighbors rushed over, their faces creased with concern. Mrs. Green was first peering at Gloria's limp form. "She was fine just now," I cried, my hands trembling for effect. I gave her noodles with eggs and she collapsed. A crowd gathered, their whispers turning to gasps as I accidentally found the pouch under Gloria's pillow. "What's this?" I asked, holding it up. A bold neighbor, old Lee, snatched the pouch and sniffed it, his eyes widening before he crumpled to the ground. 2 others followed, fainting from the potent sedative. Panic erupted. "It's cursed," someone shouted, the village's superstitious nature igniting. In the late 1970s, such beliefs held sway, and I let the fear spread. "Take her to the hospital," I urged, hoisting Gloria's unconscious body onto a wooden cart used for market runs. The crowd backed away, wary of the cursed pouch, leaving me to push the cart alone. I played the part of a frantic daughter-in-law, my sobs echoing through the dirt paths. The road to the town clinic was rough, winding past fields and a steep gully. At a deserted stretch, I paused, my heart steady despite the chaos. With a calculated shove, I sent the cart crashing into the ditch, Gloria's body jolting against sharp rocks. Blood seeped from her legs, the bones shattered beyond repair. I scrambled down, smearing her blood on my hands and face, and wailed for help. Villagers arrived, their faces pale. "The cart slipped," I cried. I couldn't stop it. My tattered dress and tear-streaked face sold the lie. No one questioned me in a village where appearances were truth. At the hospital, doctors worked frantically. "Her legs are crushed," one said. "Amputation is the only way to save her." I nodded, feigning despair, as they wheeled Gloria into surgery. Hours later, she emerged legless, her survival a burden I had engineered. I sent a telegram to Ethan's mother, "Critically ill, return now." He arrived the next day, his uniform disheveled, his eyes hollow with shock. "Quinn, how did this happen?" he asked, staring at his mother's bandaged stumps. I shook my head, my voice soft. "It was an accident, Ethan. I tried to save her. In my past life, Gloria's fake injury had kept me trapped, her scheme with old Sam ruining me. Now her real disability was my doing a permanent chain to Ethan's guilt." The village, quick to judge, whispered of curses and retribution, amplifying Gloria's downfall. I had used their plan, the sedative, the staged fall, against them, turning their lie into a brutal truth. As Ethan grappled with the weight of his mother's care, I felt a surge of control. This was my second strike, and it had shattered their plans. The late 1970s promised change for China, and I would seize it, leaving this village and its betrayals behind. The hospital room was stark, its whitewashed walls amplifying the hum of tension in our rural Chinese village. In the late 1970s, secrets festered behind closed doors, and women like me, Quinn, were expected to bear them in silence. But I was reborn, my past life's betrayals a map guiding my every move. Ethan Miller, my husband, stood by his mother Gloria's bedside, his face ashen as he stared at her bandaged stumps. Gloria's legs, shattered in the cart accident I orchestrated, had been amputated, tying Ethan to a burden he couldn't escape. Now I would unravel their lies completely. Gloria stirred, her cracked lips parting in a weak groan. "Quinn did this." She rasped, her finger trembling as she pointed at me. "She ruined me." Her voice rose to a scream, drawing the eyes of nurses and visitors. Ethan turned, his expression torn between shock and suspicion. "Mom, what are you saying?" he asked, his voice low. I stepped forward, my face a mask of concern, and pulled the sedative pouch from my pocket, the same one Gloria had planned to use against me. "Mom, I found this under your pillow," I said, holding it up for all to see. "The doctor says it's a sedative strong enough to knock someone out cold." The room fell silent, the air thick with accusation. "Why was this in your room?" I continued, my tone calm but cutting. "You ate the noodles I made, then passed out. I rushed you to the hospital, but the cart slipped into a ditch. Your legs were already weak, they shattered on the rocks." Gloria's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "No, that's not true," she cried. "You put glass shards in the yard to make me fall." I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "Glass." "Mom, you're confused. The doctor said your legs were infected long before. The villagers saw me try to save you. Ethan's gaze darted between us, doubt creeping into his eyes. The village, steeped in superstition, had already whispered of curses surrounding Gloria's cursed pouch. Several neighbors had fainted after sniffing it, fueling rumors of dark deeds. I seized the moment. Some villagers think you were dabbling in something sinister, I said softly, my words laced with mock concern. They're talking about reporting it to the police. Gloria paled, her accusations faltering. She knew the village's judgment could be merciless, especially in the late 1970s, when fear of the supernatural held sway. Ethan's face darkened. Quinn, is this true? He asked, his voice unsteady. I nodded, my eyes meeting his without flinching. I was scared, Ethan. I called you back to handle this. Should we call the police? Gloria's panic surged. No, she shouted, her voice hoarse. Ethan's silence spoke volumes. He wanted to believe her, but the evidence was damning. I pressed my advantage. I also sent a letter to your commanding officers producing a folded document from the village chief proving our legal marriage. I told them about you and Rachel and how you've been sneaking around. They know she's not your cousin. Ethan's knees buckled, his breath catching. You... What, he stammered. I smiled faintly. They expelled Rachel and Josh from the base. You're facing disciplinary action, Ethan. You're no longer welcome there. The truth landed like a hammer. In my past life, I had discovered Ethan's secret marriage to Rachel too late, and the military ignored my pleas. This time, I struck first, ensuring his career crumbled. And one more thing, I added, my voice low. I heard Rachel's baby might not be yours. The village talks, Ethan. You know Mark, that drifter, people saw them together. His face turned gray, doubt eating at him. In my past life, I had been a fool, trusting Ethan's lies about Rachel's child. Now I planted the seed of suspicion, knowing it would fester. The hospital room felt smaller, the weight of my words pressing down on Ethan and Gloria. The village's gossip, once my cage, was now my weapon, amplifying their downfall. Gloria's accusations had backfired, and Ethan's world was collapsing. I stood tall, my tattered dress a badge of survival. In my past life, I had been broken by their deceit. This time, I was the one breaking them. The sun rose over our rural Chinese village, its golden rays glinting off the dew-soaked fields, but I, Quinn, felt no warmth for the place that had caged me. It was the late 1970s, a time when China's rigid traditions demanded women like me sacrifice everything for family, but my rebirth had shattered those chains. Ethan Miller, my husband, stood defeated in the hospital, grappling with his mother Gloria's legless state and the collapse of his military career. My letter to his commanding officers, exposing his affair with Rachel Lane, had ensured his discharge and her expulsion from the base. I had planted doubt about her child's paternity, leaving him broken. Now it was time to go. I stood in our mud brick home, my few possessions, a trio of patched dresses and a comb folded into a cloth bag. The money I'd taken from Ethan's luggage, every bill he'd brought, weighed heavily in my pocket, a symbol of my reclaimed power. In my past life, I had withered under his neglect, slaving for his family while he sent wages to Rachel. I had believed his lies, staying behind to care for Gloria, only to be betrayed by her scheme with old Sam, the village bachelor. I had turned their plans against them this time, ensuring Gloria's permanent disability and Ethan's ruin. I was done being their martyr. Ethan lingered in the doorway, his eyes pleading. Quinn, please, he said, his voice hoarse. Stay and help with Mom. I'll send my wages home, I swear. His promises echoed those from my past life, empty then and meaningless now. I slung my bag over my shoulder, my gaze cold. Rachel's your wife now, isn't she? Let her care for Gloria. I'm not your servant. His face crumpled, but I felt no pity. With its gossip and expectations, the village had once bound me to his family's needs. Now it was a backdrop to my departure. I stepped onto the dirt path, the village stirring with early morning chores. Neighbors whispered, their eyes following me, but I held my head high. In the late 1970s, China was on the cusp of change, its economic reforms opening doors to new possibilities. I had no clear plan, only the money in my pocket and a burning resolve to escape the life that had crushed me before. The South, with its burgeoning markets and coastal cities, beckoned. I would start there, where the air was free of this village's stifling traditions. With Ethan's money, I boarded a train south, the countryside blurring past in a haze of green and gold. The journey was grueling, crowded carriages, the stench of sweat and coal, but I felt alive. In my past life, I had wandered penniless after Ethan's betrayal, dying in a car accident. Now I was rewriting my story. In the South, I found work in a small textile shop, my hands quick with a needle from years of mending. China's reforms loosening state control sparked a boom in private trade. I seized the opportunity, saving every yuan to start a clothing stall. Years passed, and my stall grew into a thriving business, then a chain of market stands. I designed garments that blended village simplicity with urban flair, earning a reputation for quality. By the mid-1980s, I owned 10 stalls, a large house, and a car, a rarity for a woman from my background. I remarried a kind man, a merchant who respected my fire, and we raised a son, a bright boy who carried none of Ethan's shadow. My new life was a testament to my resilience, built on the ashes of the sacrifices I'd once made. The village with its mud brick homes and judgmental whispers was a distant memory. Ethan, Rachel, and Gloria were left to their debts and burdens, Gloria's care, Ethan's joblessness, Rachel's struggles. In my past life, I had been their pawn, my youth spent on a family that despised me. Now I stood tall, and my wealth and family were earned through grit. The South, vibrant with opportunity, was my new home. As I looked out from my house, the sea sparkling in the distance, I knew I had broken free. Ethan's betrayal had forged me, but my triumph was mine alone. The city buzzed with life, its streets alive with the hum of bicycles and the chatter of merchants in the mid-1980s. Quinn stood in a sleek restaurant, my heels clicking on the polished floor, my curled hair framing a face no longer worn by village toil. It was my son's 12th birthday, and the banquet hall glowed with lanterns, a celebration of the life I had built in southern China. With 10 market stalls and a large house by the sea, my clothing business thrived, a far cry from the mud brick village where I had once slaved for Ethan Miller's family. Reborn. I had turned their betrayal into my triumph, but the past lingered, waiting to resurface. As I walked down the carpeted hallway, a figure hunched over a mop caught my eye. Once the radiant cousin Ethan chose over me, Rachel Lane was now a janitor, her graying hair and stooped shoulders, a testament to time's cruelty. Her eyes, once soft with feigned fragility, widened in disbelief as they met mine. "Quinn," she whispered, her voice rough. "You're rich now. That's impossible." Her words dripped with resentment, her worn face a mirror of her chosen life. In my past life, Rachel had been Ethan's secret wife, and her pregnancy was a knife in my heart. Now she stood before me, broken by her own choices. I adjusted my silk scarf, symbolizing my success in China, which was transformed by economic reforms. "Not everyone needs a man to survive, Rachel," I said coldly, my voice steady, unlike yours. Her face twisted, her mop clattering to the floor. "This is your fault," she spat. "Your lies made Ethan doubt my baby was his. He kept saying the eyes looked like Mark's, that drifter. He got drunk one night and killed my child." Her voice broke, tears streaking her weathered cheeks. "He beat me, forced me to care for that disabled Gloria cleaning her bedpans." He'd scream, "If Quinn could do it, why can't you?" Her words stirred no sympathy in me. In my past life, I had slaved for Gloria, believing Ethan's lies about Rachel's neediness, only to be framed and humiliated. I had planted the seed of doubt about her child's paternity, knowing it would torment Ethan. "That's unfortunate," I said, my tone flat. "But you chose to stay with him, to betray me." Rachel's eyes flared. "I had no choice. I had a kid then, another who was disabled because of Ethan's violence. He was executed by firing squad, leaving me with nothing but Gloria's mess." Her voice shook, a mix of rage and despair. I stood taller, my heels grounding me in the life I had built. The restaurant's opulence, marble floors, golden chandeliers reflected my journey from a village wife to a businesswoman. In the late 1970s, I had left Ethan, Rachel, and Gloria to their debts and burdens, using his money to start anew in the South. China's reforms had opened markets, and I seized them, turning a single stall into an empire. I remarried a kind man, raised a son, and owned a home by the sea. Rachel, meanwhile, had clung to Ethan, her dreams crumbling under his cruelty and Gloria's demands. "Are you happy now seeing me like this?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling. I met her gaze unflinching. "Yes," I said honestly. "You dug your grave, Rachel. I hope you stay in it." Her scream followed me as I turned away, a powerless cry drowned by the restaurant's hum. In my past life, I had been the one broken, wandering penniless after Ethan's betrayal. Now I was untouchable, my success a shield against their treachery. The village's gossip, once my cage, had no hold over me. As I returned to my son's party, my heart was light. Justice had been served not by fate, but by my hand. The golden elevator doors slid shut, muffling Rachel Lane's furious screams as Quinn stood poised in my reflection. The restaurant's opulence, marble floors, shimmering chandeliers mirrored the life I had built in southern China by the mid-1980s. My son's 12th birthday party buzzed behind me, celebrating the family and success I had earned. Reborn from a past life of betrayal, I had transformed from a village wife into a businesswoman, my clothing empire spanning 10 market stalls. The scars of Ethan Miller's deceit, his mother, Gloria's cruelty, and Rachel's treachery were now badges of my triumph. As the elevator descended, I saw myself clearly, heels sharp, silk dress, flowing eyes steady with the strength forged by fire. In my past life, I had been a pawn slaving in a rural Chinese village in the late 1970s for Ethan's family. I worked the fields, cared for Gloria, and believed Ethan's lies about Rachel, his cousin. He had married her secretly, leaving me to face Gloria's staged scandal with old Sam, the village bachelor. My humiliation ended in death, struck by a car after learning of their betrayal. But Rebirth gave me a second chance, and I seized it, calculatingly dismantling their world. Ethan's fate was sealed by my hand. My letter to his military commanders, backed by proof of our legal marriage, exposed his affair with Rachel, leading to his discharge. I planted doubt about her child's paternity, whispering to her about Mark, a village drifter. It drove Ethan to madness, his violence ending in the death of Rachel's child and his execution by firing squad. Rachel, once radiant, was now a broken janitor burdened with Gloria's care and a disabled son. Gloria, her legs amputated after I turned her sedative scheme against her, lay bedridden, a prisoner of her malice. Their downfall was my justice. I stepped out of the elevator, the restaurant's warmth enveloping me. My son's laughter rang out, his face bright with joy, so unlike the cold indifference Ethan had shown me. My husband, a kind merchant who valued my strength, stood by me. In my past life, I had no children with Ethan. A truth I later learned was due to his infertility, a secret I used to shatter his illusions about Rachel's child. You thought it was yours, I had taunted, watching his world crumble. My real family, built on love and respect, was my anchor. The village, with its mud brick homes and suffocating traditions, was a distant memory. In the late 1970s, I had left it behind, taking Ethan's money to start anew in the South. China's economic reforms had opened markets, and I thrived, turning a single stall into a business empire. My house by the sea car and son's education were testaments to my grit. The village's gossip, once a cage, had no power over me. Rachel's accusation that I'd married rich was laughable. My wealth was mine, earned through relentless work in a changing China. As I rejoined the party, my son's smile grounded me. Rachel's screams, Ethan's execution, Gloria's suffering, they were the graves they had dug for themselves. In my past life, I had begged for love, tolerated betrayal, and flinched from pain. Now I was untouchable, a woman forged by fire, shining in her light. The late 1970s had been a crucible, the 1980s my rebirth. I had walked away from their graveyard, my heels clicking on the path to freedom. Some spend their lives burying others, never seeing their fall. I saw it clearly, and I chose to rise. I raised a glass to my son, the clink of crystal, a quiet vow. To new beginnings, I said, my voice steady. The guests cheered, unaware of the battles I'd fought. Ethan, Rachel, and Gloria were shadows, their fates a footnote to my story. China's future stretched before me, vibrant with possibility, and I would seize it. My reflection in the restaurant's windows was no longer a village wife, but a woman who had reclaimed her life. With my head high, I turned from the past, never looking back.